Today's video is all about clearing trees. Yes, today I'm back out in the paddock, and out of all the shacks and the sheds that I've got, this is the most suitable to actually store equipment in. But there's a bit of a problem. The roof is completely shot and is not watertight. So in the next few weeks, I want to take this roof off and put a new one on. But before I do that, something I need to solve is the fact that all the trees behind have branches hanging over this roof and actually bearing down on this roof. So today's little project is to try to cut all that back, so then I'm in a position to take the roof off and renew it. And today I'm going to be using two tools that I've never used before and is a little bit out of my comfort zone because they're actually battery operated. Now, I'm of an age that I like to hear proper two-stroke engines, and that's the power that you need. So I'm really interested to see if battery power can actually do the same as a small two-stroke engines. And I might be a few years out of date here, but for me this is all new stuff. So let's go back into the garage and I'll show you the two tools I'm going to use. This is the Stihl HTA 50 cordless pole pruner. It has a 250mm or 10-inch bar length and comes in two parts to assemble into a pole just under 3 meters long, with the battery and the on-off switch at one end and the motor with the saw at the other. The second tool I'm using today is the Stihl MSA 140 cordless chainsaw. This one has a 12-inch bar length, and Stihl say that it should be able to make 180 cuts through 100 by 100 timber or run for 45 minutes on their AK30 battery. That's a 180 watt hour battery. Out of the box, I have to assemble the chainsaw and fit the bar and the chain to the motor unit, and then adjust the tension of the chain. Stihl recommend that the chain is a correct tension when there's 1 to 2 millimeter gap between the chain and the bar at the bottom, which I found to be quite easy to adjust before locking off in place. As usual, both saws need chain oil, which I added to the reservoir using a funnel. So that's the chainsaw ready to go. I've got the right tension on the blade, the reservoir is full of blade oil. All I need to do is put battery in this hole and I'm ready to start cutting. Before I do that, I'd like to pass on a couple of things that I've learnt about chainsaws over the years. Firstly, although they're an excellent piece of kit, they're probably one of the most dangerous power tools you can have in the workshop. So they deserve a certain amount of respect. And when you use them, it's really important to use the right PPE. And I'm not just talking about ear protection and eye protection, but I'm talking about thigh protection as well, and a proper full face visor. Secondly, also when you're dealing with cuts and normally heavy branches, you need to understand the tension and compression in branches or timber that you're cutting. Let me explain. So let me demonstrate with this small piece of timber. Now, if you're using a chainsaw to cut a piece of timber from the top, because of the way the blade is going around, there's a tendency for the chainsaw to be pulled away from you, which is quite a nice way of working. It's a comfortable way of working and it's reasonably safe. You should have your hand at the top, so if it does kick back, this brake will suddenly stop the chain from going around. However, if you're cutting from underneath, because the chain is now going away from you, there's a tendency for the chainsaw to be pushed towards you, which isn't a problem if you're ready for it, and a cut from underneath is quite common. But if you're not ready for it and the chainsaw does come back, when you get to the end, because of the tip is moving down, it will flip the chainsaw up and tend to come very rapidly towards your head. So you've got to be ready for that if you're using the tipper tool, or if you're doing an undercut and you're not ready for the chainsaw to come back. Secondly, branches and timber will always have some sort of stress and compression and tension in them. Something like this, which is a simply supported piece of timber, you've got compression in the top and tension in the bottom. And that means that if you do a cut from the top, as you go through, there's a tendency for that cut to close up, which could snag the chainsaw. So you could, for instance, something like this, you could cut the top, make a relief cut, and then finish the cut from below. If you had a cantilevered branch, say, and you've got a heavy branch that's hanging off the tree, it's going to be the opposite way around. It's going to have tension in the top and compression in the bottom. And in this case, what you might do is do a relief cut in the bottom and then finish it off from the top. So I think it's important, if you go and buy a chainsaw, that before you take it out and use it, and I know you want to get it out of the box and you want to start working in the garden and getting things cleared, it's really important that you learn a little bit about the best way of using it and the safe way of using it, because there may be things that you don't know about that could affect your safety as well. So anyway, that's my 2 pennies worth. I think we're going to take this chainsaw and take the mini chainsaw, which is the tree pruner, which is essentially just a mini electric chainsaw on a pole, and go out there and start clearing some of these branches. So this is the first challenge. We've got this in the way, maybe, I don't know whether all of that will come down, maybe just that branch. But the challenge is, the further I get into here, the nastier it gets. And I've got all kinds of branches and twigs, there's quite a lot. Really needs to come down, and I'm not even that far in to get to the part of the shed that I want to get to, which is around the back here. So I'm going to have to make a route down there, and then the branches I really want to get to are the ones up there. That's going to take a little bit of work. To get used to the saw, I started with some very light trimming of the branches overhanging this last small shed. Almost immediately, I found that I'm just thinking about the work and the cutting rather than the chainsaw, because it's so light and less than 3 kilograms. It's just very intuitive and easy to use. The other thing I immediately noticed was how quiet it is. Although I'm wearing ear protection here, I don't think you really need to. Having said that, wearing ear protection does mean that I can concentrate more on the work that I'm doing. My strategy here is to cut the branches into as bigger pieces as possible and then pull them out of here and take them away and chop them up into smaller sections or shred them or whatever I'm going to do with them in a different area. It's just too cramped here to do everything around the back of these sheds. I also come across quite a bit of old rotten timber that someone has stored here that's really not fit for anything. So while I've got the chainsaw in hand, I cut this up into pieces I can burn later. Swapping the chainsaw for the pole pruner means that I can start cutting my way into this area while still being well away from the branches and anything falling. I've got all kinds of obstacles in this area. I've got barbed wire, there's glass on the floor. I'm glad I'm wearing my proper safety boots because I don't know what else is in there that could actually end up coming through the sole. And I know that there's rain on the way. There's nothing like a bit of a challenge, eh? Hey. I use a pole pruner again to clear away into this area, and then discover why it's got a hook on the underneath, which I realise is a really convenient little tool to pull branches towards you once they've been cut. I noticed that little hook when I was putting it together and didn't appreciate how useful it was going to be. So this is a bigger job than I expected. After all this cutting today, both batteries still have 75% charge in them, and at no point did either of the chainsaws ever seem to struggle with what I'm asking them to do. And although the biggest branch I cut was only probably 4 inches in diameter, the motor didn't miss a beat and didn't feel underpowered in any way. I think I'm converted. So there's just one main branch left up there. It's so big I think I'm going to have to trim it as I take the roof off. If I cut it now, all the weight's going to go on the roof, and it's going to make it even harder to take the roof off because it will want to collapse while I'm taking it down. So this one here, this big fat one, I'm going to leave, and I'm going to have to do that as I take this roof off. That is a lot better. There's just one main branch there coming off that big thick one that has this multitude of leaves on it, but I'm only really going to get to that when I take this up. So that is looking a lot better, and just in time for the rain. I think we call that one a day. Whoosh! Well, that was a little bit messy. And it's raining now, so it gives me a good excuse to come back inside. So my thoughts on what I've just done. Well, I must admit, I definitely needed the combination of the chainsaw and the pole pruner, tree lopper, whatever you want to call it. These two pieces that fit together, which means that you can really get to those high ones. But then I also needed to use a chainsaw for the thicker pieces, and also my next job out there is to cut up all the branches, which I'll be using the chainsaw for. So a combination of these two, I really needed to get up to that height and to do the clearing I've just done. The PPE was definitely required. It's good to have a mask in front of you so you're not thinking about things flying in your face. The leggings are required, obviously, just a safety thing, and the boots more to do with what I'm standing on, and there was glass and there was barbed wire and all kinds of rubbish as well, so definitely a decent pair of safety boots is required. But what did I actually think of the battery powered chainsaw? Well, to be honest with you, it's exactly the same as using a petrol chainsaw, but a lot quieter. So I must admit that in a garden environment like I have, when I've got neighbours, I wouldn't really want to use a petrol chainsaw, to be honest with you, because it's running all the time and it's loud. Well, this isn't running all the time, it's only running when you're doing the cut. And although I was wearing ear protection, I don't think I really needed it because it wasn't that loud. It's just like using a cordless drill or a cordless circular saw. So I must admit, for a garden environment, just to keep the neighbours happy, I think I will go down the battery route now rather than petrol. That's really quite noisy and really quite hard work in this sort of environment. So obviously I've got more to do and I need to sort out what I've already cut down, but that will have to wait until the rain has finished. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please check out the other ones on the channel and please subscribe, and please go and check out our Patreon page where the membership is growing and there's extra content every week. So until next time, if you're going to use a chainsaw, please, please, please wear the right PPE and get a little bit of education before you start. I'll see you next time.